Hey there, I am Shanon Roberts, and I have been a little MIA here on my YouTube channel, but recently have been led to kick off a journey of optimal health towards longevity. And so this has actually been on my heart for quite some time to begin and do. I actually set out to do this at the beginning of this year, and let me just say that this year was probably one of the hardest years of my life, beginning in May, and it went for about 4 months or so, just things that I didn't anticipate nor expect. But recently, it's been on my heart to end this year in the way I set out to begin, and also bookend the past decade of my endeavor for health and holistic health and just intrigue of neuroscience. So, to give you a little bit of background for those of you who don't know, in 2012, I started having horrible panic attacks. My very first one was in May. It actually took me to the ER. I thought I was going to die. And shortly after that, I got connected with a wellness coach named Michelle Andersen, and she was amazing. That October, I had a neurosurgeon here in my area run an MRI, and everything looked fine. Only to like 6 weeks later, I had another crippling panic attack that had me on the floor of my place of employment in the bathroom. Gross. I know. So I ended up being off work for about 3 months in the first part of 2013. And it was a challenge because I basically had this neuroscientist, neurosurgeon telling me it's all in your head, it's psychosomatic. And I had no idea what that meant. No idea whatsoever. He just said, take a walk and let your husband do the chores, and you just read books. And I'm like, I don't understand any of this. I don't understand any of this. And so I had a sense that it was connected to nutrition. I had a sense that it was connected to movement. I had a sense that it was connected to spirit. I had a sense of these things, but I really didn't know where to start. So I started with nutrition. I started with exercise. At least I tried to. And I really tried to do the things that my wellness coach was asking me to, but it was about a year and a half journey where these panic attacks would happen. Now they decreased in frequency and intensity over about a year and a half, but they persisted nonetheless. In 2000, late 2013, early 2014, I came across ketosis, and it was before keto was all the rave, right? And I learned from Dr. Tran Tien Chanh about ketosis and what that was like, primarily because I thought maybe if ketosis can help heal epilepsy, then it can heal panic attacks or anxiety attacks. And I still wasn't convinced that it was like in my head, I guess. I had no idea where it was stemming from. I was doing research and I was really digging in, but I thought, well, I'll try this. And it actually worked really well for me. It worked well for me to get into ketosis. I lost some weight. And then in early 2014, my husband and I were traveling to Telluride, Colorado, and the altitude that spurred on electrolyte imbalance and just kind of bringing everything down triggered another attack. And so I'm like, well, shoot. But I learned something. It was an experiential learning that I needed to be hydrated. I needed to have electrolytes because I was later able to travel to Colorado again and hike and did a 14-9er and did just fine because I had my electrolyte water and I was properly nourished. But that was something that I learned. And then in 2014, I began a blog called Live, Eat, Sweat, which was focusing on balancing spirit, nutrition, and fitness. And the nutrition portion, I was really kind of honing in on Whole30 and just eating whole foods and not having things that were, neurotoxic or things that helped heal my gut and things along those nature, brain hormone balance and all of those good things. So in 2015, after I started that blog, I was really focusing on loving my daughters. So I have two young adult daughters who are amazing. And after that first attack in 2012, or second attack, December, I thought, gosh, I can't go. Like, I am not in a place to leave my kids behind. I don't want to leave my kids behind. So my daughters really became a priority in my life and just being very intentional with them. However, that didn't translate to my marriage, but in 2015, it was put on my heart to really begin to love my husband and to take like some words out of my vocabulary as options. And so I pressed into that, and our way of bonding was to begin to train together for Spartans. So in 2015, my husband and I completed a Spartan Super and a Spartan Sprint together, and then he went on to complete a beast. So he won the trifecta award. Woo-hoo, good for him. We actually had our picture in the magazine, like Strong magazine. We had a picture there, so maybe I'll put that in here. But in 2015, I was so intrigued by science and also spirit, because I believe they go hand in hand. I don't believe that they're mutually exclusive. I came across another doctor, or I don't think he's a doctor. He's a neuroscientist and pioneer in neurological study, um, Newberg, excuse me. And so he's this pioneer in spiritual experiences. The field of neurotheology is what they call it. His research includes taking brain scans of people in prayer and meditation and rituals and trance states in attempt to better understand the nature of religion and spiritual practices and attitudes, because I had, grown up believing in God. And so I wanted to know how they were connected. Now, if you remember, Live, Eat, Sweat was with the foundation of live, spirit, eat, nutrition, sweat, and fitness. And so I was really intrigued by this neuroscientist's data and just what he presented based on science. I was just completely intrigued. That year, I was also diagnosed with skin cancer, but I was still growing stronger, and I began helping others. And then I started discovering my purpose and what God had for me. And so in 2016, you know, I've gone from, this attack that triggered this cascade of events that had me focus more on my daughters, focus more on loving my husband. And then now here I am in 2016, and I'm like focusing on loving others and going and serving. And then I have this moment. It wasn't really a panic attack. I'm not quite sure what it was, where it was this question of, what if you had a year to live? What if you were to live like you were dying? And I'm like, well, again, I don't want to die. I want to be here for my kids, and I want to be here for my husband, and I want to be here for my community, because now I'm growing in awareness of my community. I'm feeling better. I'm not having as many attacks. And so I started serving in my community. Sorry. And then 2017, I self-published 3 books. I went on a mission trip to Guatemala and Dominican Republic. These were medical mission trips, which were amazing. And then I had an attack on each of those trips. This again was triggered by severe dehydration and severe electrolyte imbalance because of the heat, because of the nature of the work. There was some altitude difference in Guatemala specifically, and I was up on an IV and everything. It was like very scary. And I thought, no, this is not going to be happening again. And then to add to it, when I returned, I got home. I really apologize for my dogs. I got home, and then I had a lump on my left breast, and I had to have that biopsy because it was complicated, they said, and then we had to keep an eye on that. So here I am. I'm incorporating whole foods. I'm exercising, and I'm moving my body. I'm loving my daughters, loving my husband, loving others in my community now, and I'm also beginning to create art again. And because I'm an artist, and it was just this season of just a whirlwind of goodness that was taking place. And I had this desire to mentor others. It was ignited in me, and women were actually reaching out to me. So then in 2018, I start to connect with loving other people and loving one another, and my purpose and calling was solidified. So it was really motivating, I guess, to know, yes, I'm called to be a mother, yes, I'm called to be a wife, but I also have a calling to minister to others and to mentor others and to connect others to whatever it is their purpose and calling is. And I actually began to have people reach out to me who had similar experiences, and they were told, I'm fine. All the tests say I'm fine. Everything is fine. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm like, oh, I know what you mean. And so that really led to this good conversation in 2018, where I began to mentor with gals in my community, and I still do that to this day. There are about 60 gals so far who I've been able to come alongside with and mentor. Also in 2018, doctor recommended the mastectomy of the tissue that was rapidly growing. Unfortunately, it was benign. All was well. But then in 2019, I took a bit of a break to just kind of process everything that had been taking place. I'm one that likes to look back, and that's part of this. I've been looking back over the past 10 years, and I'm just so grateful for where I've grown and how I've changed and how I've been healed and how I've been learning. And I was doing the same thing in 2019, and I'm trying to kind of tweak things so I'm operating more at my optimal um, abilities, capabilities. And I came across Dr. Daniel Pompa, and he talked about intermittent fasting and fasting for longevity. And I'm like, well, I'd like to live a long time. The life expectancy on my side of the family is like 70. And so, well, that's not too far away, a little less than 30 years. And so I also noticed that I was becoming increasingly sensitive to others, and another sense of increased creativity, and I started to create more. And it was like, these are just observations that took place. Well, then 2020 hit, and well, everybody knows 2020 is felt like a crapshoot, right? I, for the first time in my life of 20 years in orthopedics as a orthopedic designer, was now working from home, and I've been working from home ever since. So over 2.5 years. Or I'm sorry, over a year and a half, which is crazy to think. But I learned that year to really refocus and focus on my physical health, because now I'm loving my husband, I'm loving my kiddos, I'm loving these amazing women that are being brought into my life to mentor and come alongside with, and I'm loving my community. And I had to learn how to love my enemy. That's a whole story that's maybe for another time. But I had to learn to love my enemy, and then also refocus on my physical health, because I really, like, I wasn't moving as much. I was eating more. And by my birthday that year, I had gained the COVID 20, and it was not pretty at all. So I got connected with this Dr. Wayne Scott Andersen, and his focus is on optimal health and longevity as well. And so I got connected with his teachings and behavior modification and things along those lines. And still, I'm coupling spirit with nutrition and exercise and also relationships, because I learned in 2018, 19, and along the way that we can get tunnel vision sometimes, and we have to bring those that we love along with us and not, put them on the periphery. And so I'm balancing these four components, and I set out to walk in that after I lost 26 pounds last year, which was great, awesome. But then 2021 rolled around. I'm like, okay, this is the year. This is the year that I'm going to walk in optimal health toward longevity. I'm going to continue to love my husband and my children and the women that have been brought into my life who are my tribe. I'm going to continue to walk in my purpose and my calling, and I'm going to continue to work in my career. But this time, I want to achieve that optimal health toward longevity. And then one of the most trying and challenging things in my life happened in May, and it was just like this downward spiral for me from there on. It was just things I was not prepared to walk through, and things I didn't expect. Just a plethora. And then about August, September, it was like, okay, we really need to go back to what was put on your heart at the beginning of the year. You really need to love yourself. You've learned to love others. You've learned to serve. You've learned to go. And it's now time to love yourself and steward well this physical body that you live in. You don't want to go back to panic. You don't want to go back to anxiety. You don't want to get into obesity where you were like teetering around last year. You don't want to be playing with inflammation. It's time to love yourself. And so for the past 4 weeks, it's really been on my heart. Okay, it's time. It is time to do this. And there have just been so many confirmations for me personally. And just this past week, I came across a gentleman, Andrew Huberman, another neuroscientist. He's a tenured professor in the Department of Neurobiology at the Stanford University School of Medicine. And he is just blowing my mind in the best of ways with explaining the importance of thyroid health and explaining the importance of metabolic health and testosterone and estrogen. And all, again, he's bringing to mind these things that I've kind of collected in my toolkit, in my toolbox over the past 9 years of intermittent fasting and whole foods not processed foods, and sleeping, and all of these components. And I was like, confirmation after confirmation. Okay, it's time. Continue loving God and your husband and your daughters and your tribe and others in your community, serving them and loving them the way you've already been doing, fulfilling your calling. But now it's time to increase self-care and love for yourself. And I know that can be difficult for some, but we are called to love God, love others as we love ourselves. And I've been of the conviction that that's the poor part that I neglect a lot of the time because I'd rather just focus on others. But here I am. I'm ready to apply what I've learned from neuroscientist Andrew Bergman, neuroscientist Andrew Huberman, Dr. Gosh, totally drawing a blank right now. Dr. Tran Tien Chanh, excuse me, Dr. Daniel Pompa, and Dr. Wayne Scott Andersen, and take all of these data points and all of this information and apply it in a very real way. So I do work in orthopedics, so I love data. I love white papers. I love research papers. I love studies. I love all of that. And my husband and I, well, I guess I joke because I'm like, spirit and science, they're not mutually exclusive. I think they complement one another, and one does not disprove the other. And that's my position on that. So I'm ready to apply the practical tools that I have learned over the past 9 years, and especially this past week from Andrew Huberman, and begin to really, I've already designed the protocol. So here's the part you might be most interested in. Beginning today, so this is sort of a Christmas gift to myself of launching pad or springboard, if you will, into optimal health that leads to longevity. And so my goals are optimal health for longevity. I want to achieve a BMI of less than or equal to 24.9, waist measurement that is less than or equal to 29 inches, body fat of 20% is probably ideal, visceral that's less than or equal to 5, increased muscle percentage, fasted blood sugar at 70, and my C-reactive protein is less than or equal to 0.5. So you're like, how are you going to measure all of that stuff? Well, I'm going to have blood work done, so my baseline will be established, and I'll have those results next week. I'm going to have my thyroid with TSH tested, C-reactive protein tested, vitamin D3 tested, growth hormone tested, and a full metabolic panel. So I will have that blood work done, have those results next week, and then after December 25th, so in between then and New Year's, I will have the blood work done again, and then I'll be able to see the marked improvements. Now, as far as the composition that I was mentioning, I have an Omron body composition scale. So I plan to check my weight, which is not really all that significant for me. It's about composition. So it's more about my BMI, body fat percentage, body muscle percentage, and the visceral fat. Now, granted, this probably is like not the best way to do it, but it's what I have, and it helps me establish a metric. And as long as I see the trend, that's all that matters. And then I'm going to do body measurements weekly of waist and hip. Like I said, I'll reassess the blood work after 8 weeks and modify it if needed. And I want to maintain this until May 2022 and just really have this bookend of this started in May 2012 when I was in my early 30s and everything started to decline by way of hormone and growth hormone and all of those, awesome hormones that I've just learned more about in the past week. And here I am 10 years later, and I want to see an upward shift and a balancing that is better than my early 30s, but actually points to like maybe mid 20s, right? Wouldn't that be awesome to have in my early 40s? And then have this bookend of May 2012 and May 2022. And of course, if after experimentation I see a need to tweak things, I will. And so I'm also interested and curious on observing the impact this will have on my relationship with God, self, and others. Will I be more sensitive to His Spirit? Again, if you're interested on neuroscience study on that, Andrew Newberg, excuse me, he's a neuroscientist who have done work on that. I want to see the impact on my motivation, my creativity. Will paintings look different? Will I be more creative? Will I want to create more? And of course, the impact on my libido and just overall sense of well-being. How do I feel? Do I feel younger? Am I recovering faster? Does my hip still feel sore? Do I still feel like I need to stretch all the time? Just all of those things. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm starting off. I plan to update, probably not as long as this first kickoff, every Saturday with just my stats. I'm not going to share photos because that's not what this is about. Obviously, with my body composition potentially changing, one will think that it will. That's the hypothesis, correct? That there will be a change, but I'm not going to post that. I'm going to post my weight again because it doesn't really matter. It's the BMI, it's the body fat percentage, and it's the blood markers that I'm going to test that are most important to me. Now, at the end of this 8 weeks, I am going to take photos for myself and I am tracking my weight for myself. So I might share a progression at the end of the 8 weeks of what this has looked like, and then what I plan to do moving forward after that into 2022, and with that date of May 2022 on the forefront of my mind. So there you go. That's what I'm doing. This is, I guess, my vlog for this journey of optimal health towards longevity, and just really loving myself the way I've grown to love God and others in my life and serve them. I want to serve and steward this body well and have it be able to function optimally for longevity, and not be one like my family members who don't live much past 70 for the most part. And I want to be around for a good while again for my daughters and maybe my granddaughters and great granddaughters. I would love to see that. My husband's side, they lived into their 90s. So I would love to be able to have that in my life as well. So there you go. There you have it. Again, I am forever grateful to the folks that I have connected with over the past 9 years who have pointed me to so much information, and just been, never really in person except for my wellness coach, Michelle Andersen, but just providing data. So Michelle Andersen, Dr. Tran Tien Chanh, Dr. and I'm sorry, I keep saying Dr. Andrew Newberg, the neuroscientist, Dr. Daniel Pompa, Dr. Wayne Scott Anderson, and now Andrew Huberman. So if you guys ever see this, thank you. I just thank you for your research. I thank you for your diligence, and I thank you for sharing content and information that help folks like myself to be able to take what can be really deep, dense topics and filter it down to a crude way that we have a tool that we can then apply. So I'm doing my best to apply what I've learned, and we'll see what the result is. All right. Well, thank you. And until next week, take care.